This week's Millennial Affirmations. Avocados are a reasonable price. That noise in my car is not a problem. It's not too late to find out what a 401k is. I know how my medical insurance works, and it will cover my birth control. One day, I will be able to afford a home with a tree that I can lie underneath. We didn't want to watch the world burn. We just wanted gluten-free marshmallows.
Welcome to Once in a Generation, the podcast where being a millennial isn't just having 19 in your birth year, it's dealing with the complicated feelings about your Harry Potter book collection.
We're your hosts. I'm Chase, he, him.
I'm Liv, she, her.
And Katie, she, her.
Each episode will unpack the mess that is our generation and the times we've lived through, trying to answer the question, was it ever really supposed to work out for us?
Because being part of the most resilient generation means we still have to let the dog out to pee, even when the world is literally on fire.
This is Once in a Generation. Let's unpack the damage. This week, we're talking about the millennial midlife crisis. We thought this was a really great place to start considering a core, at least the only identifying thing that we could really find when we talked to our communities, our loved ones, random people on the street. When we talked about the millennial midlife crisis, it was starting a podcast is a really big red flag that you've hit it. But we wanted to go past that. This show is really about digging into not just the cause and the effect, but also the why behind what we expected a thing to be and what actually ended up happening. So when we went out and very scientifically polled a bunch of random people who were at Chase's house, as well as a bunch of gay people who lived in my phone, and
They live
several
in your phone?
They live there, yeah, permanently, as well as several Slack groups that didn't ask for this and asked, what do you think of when you
Where
think
they
of a
work
midlife
Slack
crisis?
groups. This is
That's
important
important.
context.
Because my job has not figured out Slack. We have
Oh,
teams.
God, we can't unpack that yet.
We can't unpack
We're
that
not
yet.
there.
Of what they thought a midlife crisis looked like. And then Chase, you were there, so you remember some of the things they brought up.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we ask what do you imagine a midlife crisis is, it's the trifecta. Really nice car, sleeping with your secretary blonde person, or traveling around the world maybe to get hair plugs.
Getting
Yeah.
a divorce, marrying younger, trading for a younger model. Why are all of these stereotypes masculine tropes too? That's
Because men
something
are the
else we
most
can talk about.
important. You didn't know that, Katie?
Women are always in crisis if we don't have to wait for middle age.
Yep.
That's the actual answer.
That's the truth.
But looking at that, like, I'm trying to understand because I don't have enough money for a car. I actually like my spouse, so I don't want a blonde bimbo. And I'm trying to figure out what a millennial midlife crisis looks like. I mean, to me, it's like you have a little extra money in your paycheck and you go on Etsy and you buy a little sweet treat.
So first, I'm just trying to wrap my head past the Chase plus blonde bimbo image that I have in my head. That's going to live rent free for a while.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is I was thinking about like, my millennial hairdresser that I see, which no one even calls them hairdressers anymore. I don't know why I just said that. My
What
stylist.
do they call them? They call them
stylist.
I still call mine a hairdresser, but
Okay.
that's because she's like
I feel like that's
old
calling
school.
someone a secretary. They're an administrative assistant, like
And
They're-
that's why no one's running off with them anymore, is
they're
title
administrative
inflation.
assistants.
As soon as the title
Exactly.
stopped being sexist, they felt their worth and were like, I could be the boss.
Exactly. They're going to girl boss their way and cheat with their own secretaries next. Sorry, administrative
Who has a
assistants.
secretary? That's really it.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's a
for
different
day.
conversation.
But anyway, I was talking with her a couple weeks ago, and she told me that she got a divorce from her husband when he went through his millennial midlife crisis. And what his millennial midlife crisis looked like was refusing to do kid pickups from school, and spending all of their free money on Funko Pop figurines.
It sounds like
They
he's just kind of
Funko.
a dick. I don't know if
Yes.
that's a midlife crisis.
No, but that was his, "I am going to die one day, and I don't know what I'm doing with my life, and I'm disavowing all responsibilities and buying shit." Um, which I feel like sums up a lot of people's assumptions about what a midlife crisis is supposed to be.
Did we
Hmm.
really downgrade from, like, a Corvette or a Ferrari or a little red BMW to Funko Pops? Like, is that where
100%.
we are?
I mean, every person is different. For me, it's like Ren Fair swords and D&D trinkets. So, like, we like to expand what the sweet treat is, but it
But it is the
is.
little treat, not the
Mhm.
big car.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, according to this article, in Fortune, millennials who were born between 1981 and 1996 earned 20% less than baby boomers did at their age. Plus, they are burdened with student loan debt, a challenging job market, rising housing costs, which diminish their ability to establish financial stability. We are also delaying all kinds of milestones, including buying homes and having kids, thanks to rising housing costs and inflation, which limits their ability to spend carelessly on a midlife crisis.
Precisely, we can't afford to have a midlife crisis. I couldn't even afford to have my quarter life crisis in my 20s, but it happened anyway. And I restarted my career after that point and worked my way back up from the bottom again. I think there also are a lot of other millennials who have done the quarter life crisis already, and we're tired of what that looked like, and we're like, I can't do that again.
I have a theory on why millennials go through the quarter life crisis over the midlife crisis. I think when we were in our 20s, we went through so much shit. Like we did the 9/11, I mean we didn't do it, but it
Tell me how you
happened.
really feel, Chase.
It happened.
Was it an inside job?
That's for the Patreon.
That is for
Um,
Patreon.
we went through the 2008 recession, and we went through COVID. So I think a big reason why millennials went through a midlife crisis is because we went, "Fuck it, this world sucks. Like, let's just do what we want." And we were in our 20s, so we hadn't developed the fear of being, like, non-homed, or we always thought we could go back with our parents. We never wanted to, but we could.
Well, rent was also like 7 nickels, and
Rent?
which was up from
Where
1
did you
nickel.
live?
I Florida, Georgia, like random up and down the East Coast. Like my first place I rented was a room for like 300. My rent didn't go above $1,000 until I moved up to the DMV.
Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, I
That's
guess it's
impressive.
because I lived everywhere that aliens would invade. Like, I
that's
lived
reasonable.
and so the lowest rent I had was when I lived in Memphis, and that was in my early 30s, and my rent in Memphis for, like, a giant studio loft was $1,000. And then I moved to DC, and I got a junior one-bedroom in Arlington for $2,100.
I know when you lived there, and that was a ripoff. That like for a junior one,
Junior one, I mean, it was pre-pandemic.
I know. All right.
I mean, it's expensive to live in this area. It's expensive to live in general, but in cities.
I wonder one factor that when you get into like the scholarly stuff about what midlife crises were for generations past, a lot of them center around purpose and around I haven't lived my purpose in life. Maybe my purpose is to go marry this blonde woman and drive this car that is I just looked up the stock images and they are all of that too. But that millennials we kind of invented this concept. Maybe not invented is a bit too charitable of a word because some boomers and Gen Xers also did this, but of really centering our morals and our purpose in our work lives, even when we were girl bossing like crazy. And that might be more tied into why our crises look so different.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, are you positing, because I wouldn't disagree with this, that we are potentially avoiding some of the midlife crisis because we're starting out a bit more value aligned to begin with?
Yeah, could be.
S I don't disagree. I actually that resonates very deeply with my own personal experience, but I also had a moment where I was like, you know what? Who defined it as a crisis? Because I remember my quarter life crisis. Actually, was a really great moment. It was horrible. Reinventing yourself is terrifying. It's excoriating. I switched from academia to marketing with no bona
What
fides
a
or reference.
shift.
Right, right. Let's talk about film and critical studies. No, now we're going to sell you a Facebook ad.
Patreon.
Um,
We're gonna do that on the Patreon.
that's a different conversation. But it was horrible. It was excoriating. It was also like the most profoundly defining moment of my life to that point. Second only to when my father passed away. So it was like, it was really beautiful too. And not to get overly philosophical and poetic here, but I think the crisis was my family and my friends who looked at me and I wasn't earning money while I was figuring out
Mm.
what to do. I stopped being productive. I stopped being convenient. Suddenly I was this weird person that they had to build conversations around in family and friend dynamics because I was employed and they didn't know where I was going yet because I didn't know. I think also when we talk about like even the traditional midlife crisis, guy, red car, hot blonde. It's disruptive to the norm, right? You've like walked out on your family supposedly and like maybe have told your boss to go F off, So again, it's like this, you've disrupted your productivity narrative. So trying to walk it all back and not just
Professor
be on a
Katie.
soapbox. I guess, and this was not my intention when I was coming into this podcast, but I kinda wanna deconstruct, like, is it actually a crisis? Or is it just that we're being told it's a crisis whenever we stop and take a moment to be like, "Wait, am I actually in alignment with myself?"
That is hella deep.
That's very deep. Maybe she should do the affirmations. Maybe
Maybe
that's
next.
the
No,
Maybe we'll switch
no,
it up.
no.
we switch it
I
up.
can only be so sincere for so long. You can get me talking academic. That's great. You asked me to take a deep breath. I don't know how to do that.
Oh, none of us do. That's why we're here. That's why we're trying to talk
Listen,
for
the
a long.
only time I take a deep breath is when I have my CPAP on, and I'm not doing it myself. It's helping.
Me, it's just entirely smoking weed. That's the deepest breath that I'm gonna be
I thought you
taking.
weren't supposed to inhale deep.
How are you? What are you doing?
I don't know. I'm not a good weeder. I I don't do the weed as much.
No, not
I mean,
not all.
sometimes.
Not too much devil's lettuce.
No, I'm much more
No.
of a, alcohol and watch TV and just, like, let the world pass by.
So
You
why
just
aren't you having a traditional midlife crisis? Because you definitely sound like you're of the right generation.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I don't know if he's a role model. He's certainly not, but my role model is Don Draper, and he's like the worst role model. But to be fair, we both have 2 divorces and 2 marriages, so matching. We both work in the creative field, and I do want to run off to California and hang out with some hippies and look at the ocean.
And
So,
invent the next Coke commercial.
yeah, well, we can all be so lucky. There's no new products to invent. Like we do Facebook marketing and things like that. We're never going to have one of those campaigns. It's all going to be UGC. There's nobody cares about brand anymore. Anyway, I can get on a soapbox about that, but
Side note to our listeners, UGC is user generated
I'll
content.
put a little thing up so that people can understand our marketing lingo.
Yeah, we're down. It's gonna be you are gonna have to listen to us talk endlessly about the life conditions of our generation. But if you listen for long enough, you will fix your entire marketing ecosystem. Like you will find ways to make money by accident. And that's why you should subscribe immediately. Because normally we have to charge for this.
It's immersion therapy for direct response marketing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
can't,
exactly.
Do you think that millennials are to blame a lot for this change in marketing?
in the same way that I think people blame the obvious actors, right? So like millennials are the influencer generation, right? So we are the obvious actors in that. Um, but there's only one millennial I actually blame for that, and that's Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, that's fair.
You
I
know,
I blame Mark Zuckerberg for the way that information works today in the same way that I blame Robert Moses for the way that traffic in cities works. I don't blame the people who suddenly had to get to work in the city and cars were becoming more and more available, and as they dumped more and more cars onto roads, they needed to build more roads because traffic was so bad, and it just kind of kept going again and again and again. People are gonna make use of what's put in front of them, but it has to be put in front of them first. And in that same way that of what Robert Moses did. You can't tell I read The Power Broker this winter, because it's been all I've thought about every single day. But I think it's a really similar allegory. You can't imagine DC without that big choke point in the downtown center of it. You can't imagine Atlanta without Spaghetti Junction, what all of those roads would look like in the same way that you can't imagine what going out to eat at a restaurant would look like without looking at Google reviews or without, years ago, DMing your friend on Facebook or, trying to buy or sell something on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, the only counterpoint I have to that is if it didn't work, they wouldn't keep doing it.
Yeah.
So there's a level of it's working with us and other generations.
The car will get to work eventually.
Will it?
It might just take 10 hours.
I'm gonna you know that scene in American President where it's like the people are so hungry they'll drink sand and the counter is no,
Mhm.
they're so thirsty they don't know the difference.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I've just horribly misquoted that and I'm very sorry, Aaron Sorkin. I still love you. I'm gonna make the same sort of argument here, which is I think it is working. I think YouTube had staying power even before it turned into like a mass revenue system. But since then it has become far more insidious, right? So it was um, freer, less manipulated, pre-engagement algorithms, influencer marketing as a corporate marketing strategy rather than like grassroots marketing. And I would argue the same about social media. So I know I'm talking about this the same way I would as if I were a professor, and I do not mean to do that
That's
with you,
why
my
you're on the
friends.
podcast,
why you're on
Katie.
the
That's
I
podcast,
why you're on the
know.
podcast.
But I'm just imagining someone sitting there listening, being like, God, she soapboxes a lot. Um,
Kill your
yes, I
critic.
do.
Yeah,
Kill her.
yeah.
No,
No, your
no.
critic. Yeah.
Your critic.
I want to wine and dine them.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
Anyway, where I think I was going with this is I think it wouldn't work if it weren't so popular. I think that's why like platforms like Snapchat never really took off as like the vehicles that we see TikTok and Instagram and YouTube being. Uh, but also there's so much money going into those that Snapchat never got in order to make them that profitable.
We've talked about how values, being originally value centered in our 20s, might have made it less likely that we'd have a midlife crisis. We talked a little bit about is it a crisis at all? Moving into the idea that it's all just kind of been a crisis and maybe we just don't notice the difference, which is the name of the podcast. I feel like millennials talk all the time about how many once in a generation things can you possibly live through, once in a generation pandemic, once in a generation wildfires. I know the land I grew up on went through several once in a generation floods that were supposed to be only, every 100 years or so. And that it feels like there's an increase in the number of those things happening to the point where we just kind of live through it. I know I was in a business meeting while January 6th happened right outside my
Oh
window.
my God, same.
And it was just like, well, this is just another thing that's happening in my life. Like, let's just keep on moving. Someone's got to sell all this ad space, right? I'd love to hear a little bit of y'all's thoughts about that.
I think it was really interesting. I had a conversation with my parents about this, about how we went through so many things. And my dad's response, who is a boomer, was, well, my parents went through World War II and the Great Depression and all of these things. Like, we can't even have a direct response. We didn't even get a Great Depression. We got a Great Recession. Like, we all the things that we go through are so minimized in other generations' eyes that it just baffles me how we even get a foothold.
I completely agree. I'm processing multiple thoughts here on the fly
Millennial
while we
problems.
are live recording. How much can a neurospicy millennial parallel process before she explodes on air? Let's try. No, so I think one for me, my everything's been broken our whole lives. And at some point we accepted that as the normal. So I think that there is a tendency sometimes when people hear this kind of rhetoric of like, God, I miss precedented times of like, oh, you poor sweet summer child, didn't you know the world was already broken? And it's like, no, but I just want to go back from living headline to headline.
Mm.
You know, that's it's exhausting. So I think we had already accustomed ourselves to a certain kind of baseline, and then it just keeps getting worse. And it's like a step change function down. It's not spiraling into hell. We're just like step functioning down with every awful headline and every pandemic and every riot and every single thing. And it becomes really overwhelming, but there's no unifying narrative. And this is where I wanted to get back to is, you know, when you talk about World War II or even Vietnam or the Great Depression, there's this really strong narrative. Some of it was created post historically, like after it was all over, you know, but whether it was the Cold War or whatever, like this is the narrative of the experience. And it's why you're experiencing this. And it's what ties these things that might be otherwise totally seemingly unrelated between Japan and Britain, you know, but it's unified under one war. Or the rising prices of food back at home in the States, but it's tied to things going on around the world. I don't think we have a unifying narrative for all of the tragedies and unprecedented precedents that we're going through that fit comfortably with our current mindsets, you know, because when and I'm soapboxing one more time, when I think about the common thread through all of these things, it's like capitalism is breaking to the point where we can't return. You know, like this is not maintaining the status quo and, "Oh, yes, same shit, different day." Like, this is if you tie the narrative together, it's like we're at the fall of Rome, and that's a really uncomfortable narrative for people to embrace.
Do you think that we're the first generation to kind of realize that? I mean, because they talk about we I mean, I was 13 when I got my first cell phone. And I think I got my first computer maybe when I was like 14, 15. And so I feel like from my perspective, since then is when it really launched off. That to me was like, all right, we've turned it into the next gear for people who drive manuals, which I don't. And so I think from that perspective, our generation was really the one who went, oh shit, things are changing fast.
It's a lot of perspective. Gen Z was and younger kind of Zillennials were the first folks to kind of come up as digital natives. We got to experience a little bit of life before, and then life as it kind of came up after. We got to experience tech without UI improvements, UX, whoever heard of it. And so we got to see all of that rapid change and kind of assumed there would be a plus on the other side of it that, didn't involve the WeWork fruit water, which I would like to do an entire
Delicious.
I want to do a whole
Delicious.
episode just on WeWork perks.
Oh,
I
we'll get there.
we'll get there. But that because of that, there was the assumption that that change would continue to happen that rapidly, that we would go from, Orville's flight, in Kitty Hawk to the moon in, X number of decades.
Did we
And
go
in
to the moon, Liv? Did we?
I
Chis gets all up in his mic real carefully.
Listen, I've just found what my niche is on this podcast, and I am the conspiracy theorist. I'm
here's the
not, which is
here's the thing,
funny.
Chase. As the person who's actually the conspiracy theorist on the podcast, just let me know when you want actual answers because I'm not that's the actually, you know what? That's a really good thing I think to get into in terms of midlife crises because so many of them, particularly with mental breakdowns or joining QAnon or really any of those moments, are centered around YouTube. Uh, there is a lot of study around this particular kind of thought that pins a single year to the rise. And then I'm going to give myself an audio break here for a second. And then
Go
I'm just
for it.
going to check what that year was because I'm pretty sure it's 2014. 2014 is the year that a lot of researchers pin this huge rise in conspiracy theories to. And There are a lot of theories as to why that is, but one of the big ones is smartphones. That is the year where 1 billion smartphones started being sold every single year, and that had YouTube pre-installed in a lot of cases. That it was easier and easier to kind of fall down those rabbit holes, so that rather than the crisis necessarily being something that came out of something internal, it could be something external that you internalize, and go down a lot of these rabbit holes. Uh, and see these really big changes in people fairly rapidly where they just get pilled. I know a lot of women who have lost husbands to the right-wing manosphere. I think that is but I also know a lot of women who've lost husbands to marathon training. Could go either way, really.
Well, and them being gay.
Weirdly, more marathon training than being gay. I think the
Interesting.
marathon training's been more disruptive.
I think more men are losing their wives right now to their wives coming out as bisexual
Oh,
or
yeah.
gay. Like, that is much more a thing I'm seeing right
That
now.
pipeline. We'll get into it. That'll be another episode of Why Are Millennials So Gay?
We could have
Because
the
we are.
yeah. We could finally settle the pansexual, bisexual debate. We are gonna solve it.
That's a high order. I don't even know if I know an answer. I'll do some research. I guess one of the things that millennials like to do a lot is also reclaim things. Like for me, I reclaimed New Balances and cargo shorts. So, how do you think millennials can reclaim what it means to have a midlife crisis as we're entering this time period?
So a lot of what I read in research and preparation for this was that whatever you're doing in your midlife crisis was what you wanted to do and buy when you were 15. And if you have access to photos or materials for when you were 15, if you have a diary, go back and sit with that weird child. Are you living a life they would have been proud of, or are you disappointing a mentally ill teenager?
Amen. I
Amen.
also, because I am increasingly out of myself as not a socialist, but not a capitalist on this podcast here. I have been rewatching season 1 of Andor, and there's this wonderful moment around the prison riot in there, and I'll try to avoid other spoilers for anyone who still hasn't caught up on Andor season 1. Um, no judgment. Uh, that uh at one point when they're breaking out of this prison, they start like setting up this binary of like, I am most likely going to die. I can either die giving them what they want, or I can die trying to be free. And I think that, as you know, for me, as I think about like, well, we're on the Titanic and there is no guarantee that there is going to be a lifeboat open for someone of my only moderate privilege in this life. I'm a second class sailor, or passenger on the Titanic.
Not business class.
I know I'm not in steerage, and I am forever grateful and also apologizing for the privilege of not being a steerage passenger. But also, I am definitely not first class, and in
Hmm.
some ways, that means I'm more likely to die if you look at the statistics from the Titanic.
We don't
Um,
need to go into Katie's
no,
in-depth knowledge of the Titanic.
we
Skip
I
that.
love
really
when this
don't.
metaphor reveals that you know even more about the Titanic than I thought you did.
You said steerage, and I was like, does she mean storage? I don't
No,
know.
no, steerage,
No.
they're class. They're class. Anyway,
Boat Facts by Katie.
Boat
Boat
facts.
subscribe on Patreon for an extra $1 a month.
We'll send you a boat fact every week.
Is it all about the Titanic? No. There are some about the Lusitania
I was
sinking.
gonna say, I knew you were gonna say summer about the Lusitania. But every now and again, there's one about Bodie McBoatface.
Yes.
Boating
And there's
McBoatface.
definitely some submarine lore
Oh,
in there,
God.
because I love a submarine drama. I've gotten really far off the reservation.
Let's circle
Cut
it back.
that. I think that's technically a racist phrase.
Oh no,
Cut
you're
that.
right.
What are oh no, the pronouns.
Oh no, the pronouns.
Oh, I'm so mad at myself too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, I've
Let's turn the submarine around and let's land into
yes. Yep.
your
You
not
were in
steerage.
steerage.
Not steerage. She's not
Right.
steerage.
All right. So we are turning this metaphor around in a way that the Titanic did not. But to that point, also the Lusitania didn't either. But anyway,
But
please cut that
there
part.
are no facts about boats that actually got to port. That's uninteresting.
Only the boats that I've been on that got to port.
We're off the rails, not racist. We can
There
go
we
with
go.
that one.
There we go.
Yeah,
All right.
no.
Very off the rails here. Okay. Anyway, I am a second class passenger in the Titanic. I'm not steerage. I'm definitely not first class, which means that I am not probably getting out of this in any advantageous way at the end of my life, short of being incredibly lucky. Or doing some things that I don't know that I can live with myself doing. Those are the ways to get ahead in this life, it feels like sometimes. And I'm not talking about sex work. I find that very admirable.
Oh,
I'm t-
100%.
Oh, yeah,
Right,
I know.
yeah.
I was going with like economic terrorism,
I,
or
w- I
like
was I was
people,
looking at your
like,
facelift, and actually I was thinking about going back to agency marketing, but um, I don't
Yeah.
like swimming with
Don't
sharks.
we all?
so
Listen,
we all.
there's always a problematic ex that we got to deal with. And for
Yep.
us, it's marketing.
It is.
Or
Okay.
Twitter advertising.
Anyway, the conclusion that I keep getting sidetracked from is
It's called a weave, Katie.
the weave. That's right.
Millennials have a weave.
All right, I'm gonna weave back. I can either die doing what they want, or I can die trying to be free. So might as well have a midlife crisis.
And that's why we started a podcast.
That's why we started a podcast. So if you like what you heard, please subscribe, listen, join our Patreon. This is the first episode. We're going to keep going. I think next we're going to be talking about participation trophies, because millennials were told they could do whatever they wanted. Their parents just wanted them to be happy. And then we realized we didn't know what that was.
I think I still have some in the closet behind
Oh,
me.
me too.
Yeah.
All of mine are gone.
Yeah.
Come back next week for more boat facts.
By Bodie McBoat.
Fine, but are you calling me a boat?